We flew in June. I was selling that stuff when the company was 6 months old with a PowerPoint, going to German Space Agency, French Space Agency. Hey, we've never flown. We are 10 people. Please give us millions to fly with us.
Hélène Huby wants to take your cargo and one day you to space. She's the founder and CEO of the Exploration Company, one of Europe's most exciting and ambitious space startups. In just 4 years, she's built a 350-person team, designing reusable capsules to carry cargo and eventually people to orbit and back. We talk about her journey from Airbus executive to entrepreneur, how Europe can stay in the new space race, and why collaboration and not so much competition might define the next era of space exploration. I'm James Wise, and this is What's Next? Conversations with the founders and CEOs building the future. Hélène, thank you so much for joining us here on What's Next. And I know you're very busy, and slotting in just a few minutes of your time while you're traveling around is very fortunate. So the point of this podcast series is to explore both the founders and also obviously the businesses pushing forward European hard technology companies. And so we're delighted to have the founder of one of the most exciting companies in that field working on one of the hardest problems, which is space and the space economy here. Perhaps we should start then with what the Exploration Company is and how you ended up founding it.
Yes. So the Exploration Company is a space transportation company. This is really our area of focus. We start with space capsule, which is basically bringing cargo and people to International Space Station and the future commercial space stations in space and bringing this cargo and these people back and reusing the capsule. That's our first product. But transportation is wider. So we are working also with the UAE to build a lunar lander, bring together Europe and UAE to the moon. And we have started to work on a big rocket that hopefully will be the next big European rocket to master the whole transportation chain.
And this is a very novel area of technology, obviously. There aren't a lot of space logistics solutions out there. There are very few rocket solutions out there today. How did you end up working in this field?
I started at Airbus almost now 15 years ago by chance. Just following my husband, I had to look for a new job. And after 2 weeks spent at Airbus on space, I fell in love with space. So I discovered, okay, that's now going to be my life. So I read tons of aerospace engineering books. And step by step, I had a chance to become like the program manager of the second biggest space program in Europe. So really getting my hands dirty in building stuff. It was the European contribution to the Orion capsule, which has successfully flown around the moon and is has successfully come back. So that was the first very, very big stuff that we produced together. And working at Airbus is great, and I'm super grateful because I learned a lot. But it's not extremely fast. And we are at a time when space economy is disrupted, when space economy, number one, has become critical for civil needs on Earth, but also defense needs. Companies are moving extremely fast with new development methods, and I couldn't see that happening at Airbus. And I'm driven by impact. I want to impact the world for the better. And so either I would have stayed, but with probably limited impact, or I decide to get out, create something from scratch. That could become the, let's say, European SpaceX, so to say. And this is what I did. It's 4 years ago. So, and to give you some numbers, in 4 years, we raised, roughly speaking, 225 million USD. So biggest seed, biggest Series A, biggest Series B ever raised by a SpaceX startup. We grew the team. We are now 350 people, high talented team, people with a lot of experience, also having top talent in the US, where we have opened, roughly speaking, 1 year and a half ago. And the way we build vehicles, it's really across nations. That's like atypical, kind of unique in the world, because we've not only reproduced the European model because we build the vehicles between Germany, France, and Italy, where we have companies, but we're also building vehicles across the Atlantic between the US and Europe. As an example, our capsule is certified by NASA. The majority of the team is in Europe, but we have top talent in the US also working for the capsule. And the lunar vehicle is being built between the UAE and Europe. And this creates also a political momentum and a financial stability, which is unique. And I think this brings also to the world peaceful message, which is very much needed right now. Space is our future, right? So how do we want to build this future? Do we want to build it in a confrontational manner, nations against nations? Or do we want to build it in a collaborative manner, where we can epitomize that actually whatever we built is just like the best engineers working together?
And I want to talk about the sort of the module and certainly the political ambition
Yeah.
of the company. Maybe we can start though with taking us back 4 years to those initial fundraising discussions. What was it like, and what were you pitching people when you started asking people for both capital and also hiring people into this new project when, in Europe, there wasn't much of a space economy to talk of?
Yes, and there was also no space capsule project. So you have to imagine we started 4 people, 50K to bank account, and no space capsule ambition in Europe. And also pitching to the investors, sometimes I had to explain the difference between a rocket and a capsule because, people who are not familiar with the topic, they don't know sometimes the difference. They know the difference between a satellite and a rocket, but sometimes they know the difference between a capsule, which is where the people are and, the way to travel in space, and a rocket, which is the way to go from the Earth to space. So at the end of the day, when you invest like early stage, you bet on a team and you bet on the market that you can understand. So the team, it was easy because we are 4 people with a lot of experience having worked together already at Ariane Group, at Airbus. We at Airbus, we already built like the capsule. So we had done once what we were planning to do. And I think this kind of provided a lot of credibility from a technical, operational perspective to the investors. We were very ambitious. And then the pitch on the market was very simple. A capsule is providing basically cargo, transporting cargo and transporting people to space station. That's a market which is growing very, very fast because you have more and more nations in the world that they want to fly their astronauts. Just in the past 5 years, right? You got India, you got the UAE, you got Saudi, you got Australia, you got Poland, you got Czech Republic. I mean, all these countries are new countries who never flew astronauts and who actually flew astronauts in the past 5 years. So market is growing very fast. On the supply side, it's very limited. You have, like in the democratic world, 1 capsule working right now for the low Earth orbit, so around the Earth. It's the Dragon capsule from SpaceX. That's it, right? You have other in development, almost ready, but this is it, point. And Europe has nothing. So if we build one, we capture 1% of the European market, which is the second biggest market accessible for us because we cannot access, for example, the Chinese market. Plus, we are providing to the US a very much needed alternative capacity, which is needed from a market point of view because the future commercial space stations up there, imagine you own a space station, 70% of your costs are transportation cost. And imagine that 70% of your costs are owned by just 1 player. You're not in a very comfortable situation, and you very much welcome another player. So that's good for the US, and also from a safety perspective. Imagine in the future when the International Space Station will be retired, which is going to happen by the end of the decade, so like tomorrow, you own a commercial space station, and you have only 1 player, and that player has some technical problems. Then who do you call? As an American, you call China, you call Russia to help you. So you also have like a safety political problem. So that was the pitch, saying that stuff is absolutely needed. And then we got funded. We demonstrated. We did step by step. So in 9 months, we built like a baby capsule. That was like super fast. And then because of that, we also convinced the governments to create a capsule program in Europe. Because in space, I must say, it's kind of, winner takes all business, and it's also risky. So very few will make it. That's why this technical credibility is so important. And because it's risky, it's typically something which is funded as SpaceX did, partially from public money, partially from private money. And this is the way we're now developing our capsule, and we will be developing the next vehicles. We start first with private money. We take the risk. We create a dynamism, and around this dynamism, then we create political momentum. We convince member states, and it's exactly what happened. We convince member states that they shall create a capsule program in Europe. The political decision was taken in November 23, so like 1 year and a half after company creation. We won that competition, ahead Airbus, ahead Thales, ahead ArianeGroup, I mean, ahead the big ones. And we are now the front runners of this capsule competition.
And that government relationship, I mean, I think it feels like the European perspective on this has changed rapidly over the last few years. But of course, SpaceX was being supported by the government almost 20 years ago, I believe, the US government. So have you also felt that change? What do you think is driving that understanding that actually, you know, the government is going to be the first contractor here and probably will be one of the payers for a long time to come?
Yes. So I think what is driving this change is the very successful example of SpaceX in the US. I mean, it's obvious. And that success, as you rightly pointed out, I mean, on the one hand, of course, it's Musk and his genius and etc. On the other hand, it's also the way NASA has transformed itself. Because as you rightly pointed out, NASA supported SpaceX heavily. I think in the first, if I'm not mistaken, in the first 5 to 8 years of SpaceX, NASA invested almost $3 billion in SpaceX, so it's a huge amount of money. And in parallel, if you have someone like Musk, who is highly ambitious, highly capable, someone who really can execute, then the combination is actually amazing. And NASA supported SpaceX in a new way. Normally, the traditional way, let's say, of doing institutional space is that NASA is a design authority. So if you're the industry and I am NASA, I will tell you, okay, I want a rocket like this and like that. And I'm the final design authority. So I will say, yes, I validate your rocket is correct and, can fly. Or I validate your capsule is correct and can fly. When I was working on Orion, this is the way NASA was acting. It means you go as NASA into every details and you audit everything the industry is doing, and it takes a lot of time. And because it takes a lot of time, the contract you have with the industry typically is a cost-plus contract. So it's not very incentivizing for the industry because, like, whatever time they spend, they know they're going to be paid, by public money. NASA changed and said, okay, now I'm going to have service contract, so fixed firm price. I commit to a service with a certain number of missions. And then based on that, also the industry can invest, fundraise, because there is a business plan which is guaranteed by my basically batch contracts or me as an anchor client. That model has been super successful. And typically in Europe, we are implementing 10 to 15 years ago what has been successful in the US. So now is the right time. And actually, when we took the political decision in Europe in November 23 to have this capsule program, the decision was taken not only because Europe needs a capsule, but also because this is the first time, like really the first time, that we are having this service contract frame in Europe. And so we are together with member states and the European Space Agency pioneering this new way of doing space, which is called commercial space. And this is exactly what NASA has been doing. And ESA, so the European Space Agency, is positioning itself as the anchor client for the first mission. But they will also give us a contract for mission 2, 3, 4. So they will start acting as an anchor client. And so this is completely new. And I hope, and the beauty of that, not only that because you have service contract, you can fundraise or you can use loans to co-finance the development. So it's less money you invest from a public perspective. The second big advantage is that you immediately create the service, right? And it means that you don't have to go through all these rounds of negotiations, because the old way of doing things is if you have a capsule project, you first go to Italy, France, and Germany, you try to convince them. It takes 5 years until you have a decision. And then you've lost the 5 years. With the commercial way of doing space, you just start, you don't lose that time, then you get the service contract, and you have also no obligation to have that work share in this country, that work share in the other country. So you're much more optimized from an industrial point of view. And the last point, which is very important, is that it opens the competition between big corporations and startups. And this is very much needed in Europe. If you compare Europe to US, in the US, I would say, I don't have the exact numbers, but I would say minimum 1/3 of public money is given to startups. And there is, even for massive contracts, a competition between new players and incumbents. In Europe, we are the first example, literally, where there's been a competition for a huge, like one of the most complex vehicles you can build in the world for space between incumbents and new players. And okay, this must continue,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, and it must continue in other sectors. We're here to talk about space, but I spend a lot of my time in a government capacity trying to encourage people to think about these kind of service contracts in other areas as well. Areas like, defense and compute. There's many other areas, even in energy, where really if you want to get, and NASA's decision back in 2003, 2004 to take this approach to space was pretty revolutionary, and hopefully we can catch up now to encourage this in other sectors, because as you say, it crowds in, hopefully, startups, crowds in private capital to subsidize some of the risk here, and creates competition, which hopefully means even the big players wake up and start competing. So it's been amazing to see you sort of spearheading that political change as well as the technical change that you're building as well. But let's maybe focusing back on space. There's been some huge promises historically about when we're going to live on the moon, when are we going to have deep space travel, when are we going to fly in low Earth orbit, a bit like self-driving cars. There's been lots of promises on timelines, but it feels like actually we're making progress. Could you talk to us a little bit then about the timelines you have at the exploration company? I guess first of all, what's your goal for getting a capsule into low Earth orbit and to the International Space Station, and perhaps then some of the longer term goals like you mentioned, even a lunar exploration.
So on the short term, perhaps let's look at the past. We already sent 2 capsule prototypes to space, so we made it twice already to low Earth orbit. We re-entered once successfully. We had a problem at the end with the parachute, but the re-entry itself was successful, which is very important. It's one of the most difficult technical part to do in space, and we're actually the 3rd vehicle to re-enter in a controlled manner in Europe, like in the whole space history in Europe. So I'm very proud of my team for that. Next step is very simple, is to go to the International Space Station with our final product, which is a big capsule, big reusable capsule. It will be actually the biggest capsule in the world. It's slightly bigger than the SpaceX capsule from Dragon, and this is planned for 28. So we're working very hard for that. We are working together with the European Space Agency and with NASA, because we must be certified by NASA, which is also a big de-risking of the program, because NASA is helping us through, I would say, technical advice, and also making sure that in the way we design the vehicle, in the way we'll approach the docking, let's say, mission, part of the mission, where we basically really like dock, go to the station, we are safe and we have no risk of, colliding with the station. So that's our main focus, main priority. Longer down the road, as I explained, we want to master the whole transportation chain. And this means being able to go from Earth to space. So this means rocket. And this means also being able to go to other destinations than station around the Earth. So this means moon, the first step. And okay, Mars is perhaps one day, but we're not focusing on Mars right now. Okay. It's too much far away. So for the exploration company timeline, moon, we target before the end of the decade.
So 2030,
before 2030, exactly. Okay. And what is really amazing is that we've developed a partnership with the UAE, working together with the UAE Space Agency, Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center in Dubai, and Khalifas University in Abu Dhabi, so that we perform a demonstration of landing that will be useful both for lunar landing and actually for rocket landing. So that demo must take place in 2027 in the desert. And then hopefully we'll bring together with a co-finance project between UAE, Europe, and private investors, UAE and Europe together to the moon, lunar surface before the end of the decade. So that's the plan.
And what is it you think will be the first things that get shipped in your capsule?
We have clients already.
Oh, wow.
So the first capsule we launched in space was a very small demonstrator, so we had no clients and there was no room for clients. The second one we launched just in June. We had already 26 clients in the capsule, and the capsule was sold out. And a mix of space agencies paying to do some microgravity experiments or like science.
Yeah. I read about shampoo in space.
Yes, yeah. There is also some companies. Actually, we had a payload from L'Oréal willing to do some research in space because molecules in microgravity, they behave differently. And we also had some technologies like Airbus flying with us, technology to de-risk that technology in orbit and then to bring it back to be able to see how it has behaved in orbit. So we have already contracts for the big capsule I was talking about, the one flying in 28. We have a contract with the German Space Agency, and we have, of course, a contract with the European Space Agency. So what exactly is going to be flown, we don't know yet, but these people have already bought capacity to be able to fly with us.
And mostly we're talking about cargo at the moment.
For the time being, it's only cargo. Yes, we need to start step by step, like right as a baby, you start walking, then you can run.
Yeah.
And cargo is already difficult enough. There is a big need for cargo. I mean, if you zoom out, you take the International Space Station, 2/3 of the missions are cargo mission, 1/3 is crew mission. But yes, of course, we want to go to crew. And we might start already something beginning of next year to de-risk, I would say, the crew part.
Yeah. So the obvious question, when will humans get to fly in the exploration company capsules?
It takes a long time to fly crew. If you look at the benchmark, it takes 10 years. Okay, so it took China 10 years. It took India 10 years. It took SpaceX 10 years. So it's like a benchmark in the industry. So I don't want to discourage any investors or whatever, but that's also going to take us, roughly speaking, 10 years. To save a bit of time, we are designing the cargo vehicle already incorporating crew requirements from NASA so that we can, let's say, move faster from cargo to crew. As an example, we have 4 parachutes on the capsule. We don't need that for cargo. But if you think about a crew re-entering, you want to be too failure tolerant for any event that could trigger, what is called a catastrophic hazard. So putting lives in danger, basically. And this is why we have 4 parachutes already, because then if 2 parachutes do not work, 2 failures, then we still have 2 parachutes which are big enough to break the capsule and to enable the crew to come back safely. So what we need to do, crew, is basically a political push because it costs a lot of money, roughly speaking 3 billion to build a crew capsule. So I don't see that being 100% privately funded. I see that being potentially part of that, being privately funded, but we would need minimum, I would say, 2 billion from the governments. And we are trying to create right now political momentum between US and Europe so that hopefully the 2 continents decide to go on with this crew program. Perhaps next year we will see. But it will be the same mechanism than capsule. We start something. So what we plan to start, actually, it's an abort system. So which is the engine you need in a crew capsule. If the rocket starts burning, you want to be able to escape that problem with the rocket. If you're at the launch pad or you have just started and there is a big anomaly with the rocket, you want to save the crew. And so you need for that a propulsion system which is very powerful, that can start very fast so that you can escape.
Separates the capsule.
Exactly, you can escape this rocket having an anomaly. And this we are preparing right now, actually, a consortium and let's say a proposal to the Texas Space Commission to get some funding to get started. And we will follow the same philosophy. So we will invest a little bit of our money, we'll be supported by some public money, and then hopefully we can create this political momentum between US and Europe to get this crew capsule funded.
But optimistically, I'll hitch a ride with you to space in 2035.
Yes.
Great.
Yes. I mean, I wouldn't say optimistically. I think this is my baseline.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah. This is 2035. I'd love to see a rocket taking off, a reusable rocket, taking off from Kourou with a crew capsule on the top. That reusable rocket is our rocket. Perhaps that we've built it with a partner, whoever, but the crew capsule is our crew capsule. And we send this crew to space, and then we land in Oman, and then we take off again, and we land in Australia, and we take off again, and we land in Cape Canaveral or somewhere else. I really see our mission serving the world. And yes, 2035 is the date exactly I have in mind.
I've always wanted to go to Oman, so now I know how I'm going to get there. That's good to know. One of the big differences in your approach to, say, SpaceX's approach has been to focus on the capsule first rather than the rocket, say. Can you talk us through why you took that approach, and also sort of what are the risks in relying on other people's rockets?
So that's a great question, and I thought a lot about that when actually we started the exploration company. In Europe, when we started, so 4 years ago, it was basically September 21. And there were already like lots of small rockets having started maturing. And I was kind of, okay, if I start with a rocket, I must start small. Why? Because a rocket costs a huge amount of money to develop. You're talking about 100 to 200 for a small rocket. If you take the benchmark of the industry, you're talking about 1 billion to 2 billion to whatever, if you like want to develop a big rocket. And I was not seeing myself starting, from scratch either a small rocket, but then what do we bring new? Because we already have like 10, 15 projects of small rocket. And if we start with a big rocket, I would have to go to investors and say, you know what, please give me 1 billion and wait for 6 to 7 years and you will see we're going to build a wonderful rocket. I think it would have been difficult as an investor pitch. While starting with a capsule, it's very different. It still costs money, right? A big capsule is $500 million, but we can go step by step as we did. So you can have like a development roadmap, which is very similar, so to say, to software, with a mini capsule, a mid-size capsule, and a big one, which is costing way less money than a rocket. And also rocket, like you cannot do like a mini, because you have all the ground infrastructure, which is there as a big asset, that we don't have this launch pad for a capsule. So less money. Number two, no capsule in Europe. So we were the only player serving a market that was growing super fast. And then I thought that once we will have matured with the capsule, probably some rocket companies will have gone bankrupt. Some others will have been successful. And then we'll be kind of the only capsule company able to choose with whom we want to partner for this rocket. The last point is that if at the end of the day we don't build a rocket, our capsule is designed to be compatible with as many rockets as possible. So what we did, I don't want to go too much into technical details, but basically when you launch something, you have loads, you have vibrations, right? So we've taken the worst cases and then we've built our capsule so that this is solid enough to sustain the vibrations of Indian rockets, Japanese rockets, European rockets, and also American rockets. And so as a first step, we will have the choice. We'll be able to play the competition. There are lots of rockets companies in the world. So we will be able to play that competition. And when the times come, then, we can strategically partner with one rocket company in Europe, or we have time to build, a big rocket ourselves, because then we are credible enough because we have built this capsule to then go and get this 1 billion or 2 billions and to build ourselves this big rocket. So that's why we started with capsule.
And one of the other sort of exciting things about what you're building is obviously a talent base here in Europe. So beyond just the product that you're building and the service that you'll offer, you're attracting some incredible people to come work here. How have you found hiring for expertise in sort of the European space economy, given that many people would say it's a decade or two behind where the US and other countries are?
So we are attracting actually top talent in Europe and also in the US. The motivations often are actually quite different. In Europe, people that join the exploration company, and we have people, top people with a lot of experience. We've just hired the head of the experts, for example, at Airbus. So like someone with a huge technical experience. We've hired also recently Olivier de la Bourdonnais, who was like member of the executive committee at Naval Group and was like a key person from Ariane for like 15 years, etc. Anyhow. And in the US, we've hired former NASA deputy administrator for the whole lunar program, Mark Kirazic, who is now leading our US part. Cathy Loiders also, who was the program manager of all the visiting vehicles and who was managing director of Starbase, has just joined us part-time. She's consulting us for the time being, but like we have some top, I would say, names. These people are coming for different reasons. In Europe, some people working in big corporations are a bit like fed up by the speed. And they see what is happening in the US and asking, why can't we do the same in Europe? And they are looking for challenges. They are looking for areas where they can learn, they can unleash their talent. And this is what we provide. For the young engineers also in Europe, like we are making space history in Europe. Like we are building the first European capsule. Like as simple as that, right? So if you want to be part of this history, You join the exploration company, and you are literally making this history. On top of that, we are making this history together with the US. For the moon is together the UAE. So there is this element of international cooperation, which is attracting also people from India, from the UAE, etc., to working with us. And on the American side, it's very different. We have people coming to us because, SpaceX, as I said, it has now stopped developing Dragon. So you have top engineers who've been working on Dragon, looking for a new development. Because as an engineer, what you love is the development part, where you build the new stuff. It's not so much like the recurring part when you continue to, producing stuff and doing some incremental innovation. You love to create stuff. And the other motivation for American engineers is this international cooperation element I was mentioning. Politically speaking, right now, the US are America's first. And in space, we have a history of actually collaboration. So for many people, it's important to maintain this collaboration. And if it cannot be maintained anymore, I would say on the political sphere, or if it's less obvious, because it's still there actually, but if it's less obvious at the political level, then let's do it let's say at the private level. And we have people joining us specifically for a mission of cooperating across countries.
Yeah. My understanding is even during the height of the Cold War, Russian cosmonauts and American astronauts and many different nations were part of the International Space Station project.
Exactly.
And so if we could collaborate then, it would feel incredibly unusual that we couldn't find a political collaboration now.
Yeah, I'm very confident that is going to happen. And for a certain number of reasons. The first one is that space is hard, and typically you don't want to do it alone. Also just for a budget reason. Yeah. Also on the political side, we see now, Russia has been joining China for the moon, and Russia is being part of the Chinese-Russian lunar space station. The Americans are now very, very strong about cooperating with Russia in low Earth orbit. So I would not be surprised, let's say, because the International Space Station is going to retire. We have now as a replacement American commercial space station. Russia said they want to build their own space station. Let's see what is happening. But President Trump is now very, very strong on cooperating with Russia in space. Because, of course, then China is, let's say, on its own, so to say. So that's a way for him to probably isolate a bit China. So we have this budget reason, and we have also these political landscape reasons. So I think we will continue to collaborate.
We've mostly spoken about cargo and crew going into space. How do you think about defense and the role that sort of not just the exploration company, more broadly, space will play as a frontier for a sort of next area of defense innovation as well?
Well, space has become and is today a very, very key pillar in defense. We had at the beginning, of course, Earth. Then we had sea, then we had air, then we had cyber, and now we have space. And you take something like drones, more than 50% of the US Air Force is drone-based. Drones, they cannot work without communication, which is using space. They cannot work without positioning, which is using space. So if the space defense infrastructure is not working, more than half of the US Air Force, it's just not working also. So space has become absolutely critical. We've seen that also in the war, of course, in Ukraine. It started with space, and if Starlink doesn't work, it's going to create huge problems in Ukraine. And right now, Europe is strongly reinforcing its space infrastructure so that Europe can monitor better what is happening in Russia and also can safely communicate without being dependent from other infrastructure. So if I look at, the exploration company and how can we contribute to these defense needs, for the capsule part, it's basically around two technologies which are critical. The first one is the docking. And this provides to the national forces a capacity of acting in space. When we dock to the space station, number one, we must be extremely precise in the maneuverability of the vehicle. Number two, we must be extremely safe, right? We must not collide. So now imagine different target, which is not a space station, which is, let's say, a spy satellite. You want to fly around to collect information, to understand better what is this satellite doing. Is it like hacking? Is it looking? Is it like also who is the owner of that satellite, right? So as you want to collect information, that's always the first step in like military stuff. If you want to collect information, you fly around very close. And you have the same problematic. You need to have a maneuverability of your spacecraft, which is extremely precise. And you must never collide with this target. Otherwise, you create a diplomatic incident up there. So the same technologies are going to be reused. And actually, we've already won a small contract from the French Innovation Defense Agency. And we are, as we speak, bidding for a very big contract in the defense part to reuse this docking technology for defense application. And the very good news is that because we will be certified by NASA, we will be the safest docking technology in Europe. And this is something very, very strong to be able, to provide to European governments. I don't believe another company can build something as safe as we're going to build, also because Europe has no expertise in human spaceflight, and all the safety knowledge is built around human spaceflight. So just to give you one example, everything that could create a collision, we must have 3 independent control to control the cause that could create this collision. And this is validated by hundreds of experts looking at the design, etc. So we will bring to Europe something very, very safe. The second part is really around the re-entry. Hypersonic missiles, ballistic missiles, all that stuff is re-entering. And we are producing in Bordeaux a very affordable and new type of thermal protection that can be used for hypersonic re-entry, most probably also for ballistic re-entry. The thrusters we are printing for capsule or in niobium, which is a material which is extremely resistant to heat. And that is now in the US like the typical material for thrusters in missiles. And we plan also to provide this capability to companies which are building missiles in Europe to support basically the war effort and protect Europe against potential countries willing to invade us. So only on a capsule, people don't know that very much, but the technologies, of course, are dual technologies.
Yeah. And I think when people, certainly when I've had discussions with people about the space economy, you've raised hundreds of millions of euros in private capital, but obviously there will be lots of government money going into this space, as it were.
Exactly.
As well. And, that's hard. There's lots of demands on the taxpayer, right? Whether that's for healthcare or education as well. And so when making the case for why we should also invest in this novel area of technology, I think understanding, the long-term benefit, hopefully, of having all these private companies generating taxes and growing the economy, but also the short-term need of whether it's secure communications or its defense capabilities, I think is actually paramount to make that case as to why we should put government money to work.
Yeah, it's indeed very important. And we are receiving lots of questions like that when I speak at universities, because we want to hire also like the best talents just out of the university. Question which is very often coming is why? As exactly as you said, we have people dying in the hospitals. We have a lot of people who are unemployed, etc., etc. At the end of the day, if we want to protect our democracies, we need to have strong defense capabilities. We need to be credible and acting in space. Right? So that because if you have a satellite which is hacking or a satellite which threatens to destroy one of your critical space infrastructure, is of paramount importance. And that's exactly what we provide to the European space ecosystem. Not speaking about rocket, because this will be next time, but like if you want to launch like communication satellite, Earth observation satellite, you need access to space. So with Capsule, we provide action in space and also information in space. And then the day we build rocket, we will provide access to space. And I would add also that from a political perspective, if we zoom out a little bit, Europe was built by people who said we don't want like a third world war, like never again. That was the generation of my grandparents, the generation of, and also of my parents, I would say. Our generation is probably around, Schengen and Erasmus, and that this was like the symbol of Europe, like, hey, we can cross any frontier, etc. Now, what is Europe for young people? It doesn't represent anything. It's like an administration which is cumbersome, etc. If via space and via building very inspiring products like a capsule, like you imagine European astronauts like being ready to fly in a European capsule and going to space. Space is the obvious area where we must do it together, because one nation like France or Germany or Italy alone is never going to be able to build its own space capsule, for example, to fly its astronauts. So it symbolizes a bit like Airbus, how we can become global players, like number one in the world, when we join forces together. And I think from a political perspective, that's also very important, because democracy is fragile, as we know. The European Union is fragile. European Union has been able to maintain peace for almost 60 years now, which is like a world record in history, because we've been fighting against each other since centuries, and suddenly we have like 60 years of peace. Like, this is like unique in the whole world history.
And as a result, prosperity as well, right?
Exactly. So I think this is sometimes forgotten, and we need to kind of revive this political meaning of European Union via very concrete projects which embody the power of being together. And this crew capsule is one of, some.
Yeah. No, look, it's an inspiring message and mission you're on. Outside of sort of space, there are many young people in Europe who are looking at starting businesses today, which is great. I think interest in entrepreneurship is at its highest level. Do you have any reflections, or do you get asked for advice on people going down the hard tech route, right? The route where you can't just ask an AI bot to design an app, at this stage at least, that there's real technical innovation required and scientific progress required to compete.
So yes, perhaps some recommendations. I think the first one is to get to know, ourselves. What is the unique talent I want to bring to the world, basically, and to build a company around that and around the dream that some people have, or etc. When I speak about the exploration company, there is a very clear business case. There are very clear technologies, but there are also this dream that we can build space vehicle across nations, and through that we can contribute to foster cooperation and peace in space, which is a different way to build humanity's future via this cooperation across nations. And okay, that's my dream. But if you don't have the why of why you're building the company, I'm not sure that's going to fly very, very far. And some people are afraid of this why, especially if it's a bit idealistic. Well, actually, it's super inspiring, and it's also so important for talents to join. Top talent, people who don't need money, who can, find whatever they want everywhere, they will join for the mission, and they will join for the charisma of the leadership, and that it really matters what they are doing. And more people in the world, they want to work for something that really matters. So that why is important. I would say the level of ambition is also important. Some people, especially in Europe, they censor themselves. They are not ambitious enough. And why? Because I don't know, they are afraid to fail, or they are afraid to let them dream go, And in the US, it's yes, we can, of course. Let's think big. And that's also another message I pass when I'm asked this kind of question. Please think big. And then, okay, the third part is we must be very pragmatic. Especially if we think big, we need to start small, we need to start fast. So what's the minimum viable stuff you can start with? What's the minimum viable team you can start with? And these first steps are very, very critical, important, because then they determine afterwards the whole trajectory of the company. But I think these three elements of, number one, knowing ourselves, because an entrepreneurial journey is also I have family, I have 4 kids. So is my husband going to support me? And he said yes. Or the kids going to support me? They said yes. Because my life now is the exploration company, point, right? So I need family support. I need to know myself, my weaknesses, etc. I need to know why I want to build this company for the world. Then join to the mission, and then the first pragmatic step, which are do a tech roadmap, especially when it's this deep tech, because deep tech, it means it will take 5, 6, 7, 8 years before you come to the product. So the investors, they must see technical progresses. And they must see also market progresses. And I think this is something we did quite well. We didn't go for just like a technical development. We immediately went for a minimum viable product and we sold that product. Like this second demonstrator we flew in June, I was selling that stuff when the company was 6 months old with a PowerPoint going to German Space Agency, French Space Agency. Hey, we've never flown. We are 10 people. Please give us millions to fly with us.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And it worked because people needed like another capacity. And if you can show to your investors that actually the capacity you're building already has client, even for a demonstrator that has high chances to fail, people are willing to give you money to fly with you on something that actually may fail. It's a very strong piece of evidence that there is a big business behind. So that would be the kind of 3 directions. First, ourselves, because if like the core team or the CEO is not, ready to take everything and to have the courage like to give his or her life for the company, basically, I think it's not going to work. Then the mission, and then, this trio between sales, minimum viable product, and a great team that needs to be assembled like super, super fast.
I think it's great advice. It's also something that we think about when we make an investment, right? We look at the team, we look at the outcome, what happens if this goes right? What does the impact of this company look like? And then, so what are the steps to get you there? And, I can say we're incredibly excited to be a small part of this mission with you. So Hélène, thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you very much. And I'm incredibly excited to be part of the Balderton's portfolio. I mean, you're super helpful, also very much hands-on. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to What's Next. We hope you enjoyed the episode. And if you want to learn more about the frontier of deep technology in Europe today, please like and subscribe. And if you're interested in learning more about working in deep tech, look at the Balderton website to learn more about us and our portfolio companies.